The term bycatch is sort of a boring name for a pretty common circumstance.
The accidental capture of a species.
Species that weren't targeted.
The unintentional capture that occurs.
Inadvertent catch in fishing gears all around the world.
It happens when you catch a fish out of season and throw it back, or when a commercial tuna fisher hooks a shark by mistake, or when a turtle gets caught up in a net. When you throw a line in the ocean, you can't absolutely say what you're going to get. Bycatch happens all the time and is basically impossible to avoid. But it's also something that, at scale, can cause real harm to an endangered species or slow the restoration of fisheries that have been damaged by, the worst marine oil spill in history.
The Deepwater Horizon was under contract with BP, drilling a new well in the Gulf of Mexico. The explosion was spectacular and catastrophic. Around 10 p.m.
This is Dive In with NOAA Fisheries. I'm John Sheehan. And today we'll be taking a look at bycatch reduction efforts through the lens of innovation, rather than just more regulations. Because fishermen have to fish, and while preventing bycatch entirely may be impossible, it can be managed, accounted for, and at least mitigated through innovative approaches. A great example of one of those innovative approaches is the Gulf of Mexico, where in 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill caused immense damage to fisheries and habitats, and which necessitated an equally immense restoration response. But how do you restore marine life? You can't throw money in the water and magically grow fish.
There's only a couple of ways to provide restoration for fish.
This is Amy Pico, a project manager with the Restoration Center in the Office of Habitat Conservation.
One way is to increase production of fish, and you do this by increasing and improving habitat. And then the second way to restore for fish is to reduce mortality.
Amy works on the Oceanic Fish Restoration Project, which targets pelagic species like tuna and swordfish in the Gulf.
NOAA is working with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, partnering with pelagic longline fishermen to reduce pressure on pelagic fish. We're using bycatch reduction and reduced fishing pressure as a tool to restore for fish that were harmed by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill.
Put a little more simply,
we're asking fishermen to fish less on that species.
Pelagic longline fishermen were asked not to fish for 6 months out of the year for the last 5 years. Of course, asking someone to just stop doing their job for a while is kind of a big ask.
Yeah, this was a huge disruption to the pelagic longline fleet. So yeah, we subsidized their fishing to account for the economic loss that they were incurring to be part of this project.
As a refresher, longline fishing refers to using a long main line with branch lines or gangins hanging off of it, which are then set with hooks. Lots of them. The average longline is 28 miles long, but it's used in both large and small-scale commercial fishing operations. It's done throughout U.S. waters and the world, again targeting species like tuna, swordfish, and other billfish. It is very effective. The Oceanic Fish Restoration Project's aim was simply to leave more fish in the water to reproduce and grow the populations, thanks to a voluntary, 100% voluntary, repose by the fishermen.
And the repose is where we're seeing the restoration benefit for this project. We're doing exactly what you said. We're asking fishermen to not fish with pelagic longline gear.
But there is also a second part to the program.
Fishermen also have the opportunity to use gear that targets pelagic fish but catches much less bycatch.
While fishermen were not using their pelagic longline gear, they had the option of using alternative gear that's less effective but better at targeting a species.
The best way to do it is just to avoid things you don't want to catch altogether. But if you are fishing in the time and place where those bycatch species are present, you would like to use gear that are slightly more selective.
This is Jamie Reinhardt, a NOAA Fisheries resource specialist who also works on the project.
I mean, for me, the real highlight of the project is the work that we've done with the fishing community.
Fishermen are used to experiencing NOAA in a very limited way, either through regulation or enforcement. So here we're asking fishermen to partner with us instead of regulating them.
Right. It's voluntary, not regulatory. Participants are compensated for sitting out and compensated again for trying the alternative gear. The whole thing has been an experiment.
So this was an opportunity to learn about this new gear, both for the fishermen and for NOAA. It provided an opportunity for fishermen to start using this gear, get training, get experience, figure out if the gear could be effective for them, and it gave NOAA a great chance to collect data on the gear.
we knocked on some doors and people said, no, thank you. We don't want to do that. But once they're in the door, they want to stay. Every person that has participated has wanted to participate for a second season. So I think that's a sign of success of the project.
So the efforts are two-pronged. Less fishing, meaning less pressure on the fishery, and development of new, more targeted techniques. Those who tried the alternative gear, which was almost all of them, had the option of using 3 types: green stick, buoy, and deep drop.
Green stick gear is an actively trolled gear that has a main line attached to a large pole that's sticking straight up from the boat. This pole could be between 20 and 35 feet high. That main line is then connected to basically a block of wood that is floating in the water. And from that main line hangs about 10 gangins with hooks on the end.
Remember, gangins are like branch lines off of a main line, similar to leaders. This will come up again later.
And when the vessel is traveling with any speed, those lures are dancing on top of the water. And this technique was originally developed out of Japan in the 1960s and has made its way via Hawaii to the United States. This gear is actively fished so that if an undersized tuna is caught, it can be easily retrieved and let back into the water really quickly, right? As opposed to a pelagic longline where that fish might be swimming around injured on a hook for hours and hours.
Okay, and buoy gear?
Buoy gear is essentially 1 or 2 buoys that are floating on the surface. And there is a single main line that is weighted, and from that main line, there are either 1 or 2 hooks attached. Buoy gear is relatively actively fished. The fish that are caught on buoy gear are kind of able to be retrieved much more quickly. In doing that, we're able to kind of reduce the mortality that's happening.
Got it. And finally, deep drop.
All it is you're sending a hook really, really far down on one line on a reel, going down thousands of feet. This is fished during the daytime when swordfish are occupying the deepest parts of their habitat. It's not being fished in the areas where you're seeing tunas for sure, but because of that, it's actively fished. There's much less chance. And if you do have an undersized individual caught, it's much easier to release it back.
So, 5 years after the project began, what have been the results?
Every year so far, we've exceeded our restoration goals. For the first couple years, about 1 million pounds of pelagic fish have remained in the Gulf because of the project. We're projecting this total to be about 3 million pounds by the end of the project.
The fishermen were able to actively help in restoring the fisheries and got the chance to try out different approaches and techniques with the support of NOAA Fisheries and partner agencies. This is one example of NOAA's involvement supporting innovation around bycatch reduction. Another example from the Gulf involves trawls, those long, cone-shaped nets that are dragged behind boats. Shrimp trawls are especially big business in the Gulf, and they do a great job of scooping up shrimp, but they're also great at scooping up everything else in their way. That's why NOAA Fisheries and Sea Grant are supporting development of BRDs, bycatch reduction devices, that work with trawl nets.
NOAA and our partner Sea Grant have been going to the fishermen, meeting them dockside, going to net shops, talking to net makers to find these new innovations. And right now, currently, NOAA is testing the devices that show promise. And our goal is to certify a device that can reduce bycatch by 40%. This would be a 10% increase in bycatch reduction if these devices are adopted by the fleet.
Shrimpers are doing amazing things above and beyond the regulatory requirements to try and reduce bycatch of juvenile fish, for example. Small croakers or red snapper, they don't want to catch those things. That's a mess for them.
Because reducing unwanted catch is in everyone's best interest.
Some of the other motivations that we can work with and work on are things like, well, how can we be more fuel efficient, save money on fuel efficiency, either because we're reducing drag that's happening within our nets. The other one is, if we can reduce some of our bycatch, we can fish in these other areas, and guess what? They're closer. So we don't have to spend as much money steaming all the way out because we can fish in these other areas. And then obviously there are some marketing aspects of being able to kind of sell your product as a product that is, we have less bycatch, for example, things like that. we're not using the hammer, right? We're trying to work with the fishermen to find what can motivate them to participate in these types of things.
And this kind of innovation is happening in all U.S. waters. A few weeks ago, we spoke with Barbara Schroeder about bycatch reduction devices that were aimed specifically at protecting sea turtles.
For trawls, a very viable solution has been developed. And these are what we call TEDs, turtle excluder devices. And they are really a simple grid, a very strong metal grid that fits down into the back of the trawl. When a turtle enters the trawl, it reaches the grid, and then the grid will sort of direct the turtle either up or down, and then the net will have an opening that the turtle can push through and escape. And this technology has been introduced all around the world.
Up north in Alaska, NOAA Fisheries has supported partners such as Nature Conservancy and the North Pacific Fisheries Research Foundation in developing an excluder device that could distinguish between pollock and salmon based on their different behaviors.
We focused on fish behavior in the development of this bycatch reduction device because from the start we supposed that salmon were more powerful swimmers and could swim forward in a pollock net, and pollock wouldn't be able to do that as much. If you think about it, salmon is genetically programmed for later on in his life is going to go up a stream.
The team decided to place an escape route in the net that they suspected only the salmon could find.
They could swim up into the lee, and then we would have a big hole in the net right there, and out they could go.
These have been examples of ways to really target the species you're intending to catch, and lowering the chances of unintended interactions. Because, as Amy reminds us,
all fisheries produce bycatch.
And as Jamie also explained, the best thing you can do to avoid bycatch is just not fish. The next best thing is to be more targeted.
The last best thing to do is to be able to keep a fish alive and then be able to release it back into the water as little harmed as possible.
And that's really key, because while we're talking about reducing bycatch, the unintentional capture of a species, what's really doing the damage to fisheries are the deaths caused by bycatch. A little while ago, I spoke with Nick Haddad and Sean Meehan about another program NOAA Fisheries supports called Return 'em Right, which is helping anglers learn and deploy best practices for catch and release fishing to combat barotrauma. The program provides free training and free gear to prevent bycatch mortalities.
There's a couple different parts of the program. One of them is the education surrounding barotrauma, best fishing practices, best release practices. How can we help these fish survive release? We want to be a resource to anglers, but we also want to provide them the gear to be able to successfully release these fish.
The nice thing is that the education it's free to everyone.
The meat of the course is on barotrauma mitigation through descending device use, through venting techniques, and then the course concludes with a shipping form for those eligible for gear so we can ship them their gear to their doorstep as fast as possible.
Be prepared. You know you're going to probably release some fish, so have all your gear ready to go. So when that fish does come and you decide not to keep it, you quickly handle it, know what you're going to do it, send the fish back home.
Lastly, there's one more great example of bycatch reduction happening in Hawaii, where oceanic white-tipped sharks have been in decline for decades due to targeted fishing for these sharks in the past and ongoing bycatch.
Oceanic white-tipped sharks, they're warm water shark that are found not just in Hawaii, but all over the world. We estimate that their population size has declined by as much as 90%. And in 2018, they were listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act.
This is David O'Brien of NOAA Fisheries Pacific Islands Regional Office.
In the past, in the Hawaii deep-set longline fishery, they used wire leaders, but the problem with wire leaders is that fish, particularly sharks, their teeth aren't able to cut through that line, and so they ended up staying on the line all the way until the fishermen picked the line back up.
Which, of course, was not great for the sharks or for the fishermen.
Back in 2020, the fishermen themselves actually decided, in an effort to try to reduce their impact on oceanic white-tipped shark, to switch those wire leaders for monofilament nylon leaders, which the shark can actually bite through, and so the sharks can release themselves after they've been caught. They bite through the line and they're able to swim free after getting hooked.
That relatively small change made a big difference.
Scientists estimate we'll see more than a 30% reduction in mortality of these sharks after they get hooked.
And now there's a new regulation prohibiting the use of wire leaders in the Hawaii deep-set longline fishery.
The rule became active at the end of May, on May 31st, but actually the fishermen had already all switched over to monofilament leaders before that. The Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council is the place that really brought this whole rule together. The sharks are going to have reduced mortality, and it turns out that monofilament leaders actually have higher catch rates for the target tuna in this fishery. So fishermen are getting a benefit, they're going to catch more tuna, so it's a win all around.
So while bycatch may be inevitable, it doesn't have to be disastrous to a fishery. Bycatch can be managed with some precaution, collaboration, and a little innovation. You can learn more about some of NOAA Fisheries' efforts at bycatch reduction or some great catch and release practices to reduce your impact at fisheries.noaa.gov. I'm John Sheehan, and this has been Dive In with NOAA Fisheries.